Hello everybody, this is Gary Fielder from Denver, Colorado, and I'm one of the attorneys that's prosecuting the O'Rourke v. Dominion Voting Systems, Inc. case, in which we've filed a class action lawsuit against Dominion Voting Systems and Facebook and the Center for Technology and Civic Life, who we call CTCL, and Mark Zuckerberg, Priscilla Chan, and others. I wanted to put out this public video to give everybody an update on the situation and tell everyone that's contributed to the lawsuit how much we thank you and how much we appreciate you. And obviously for the people who have joined the lawsuit, who have sent us their affidavits, we're up to now 1,100 people. So I think it's growing at the rate that we really anticipated and we've been preparing for. And I wanted to give you an update on the procedural situation and where the case sits. We start with the filing of the lawsuit, which was on December 22nd of 2020. At that time, it was unknown as to exactly how everything was going to play out. And although we didn't specifically anticipate January 6th and the happenings at the Capitol, even in the complaint, you can read that we predicted that there would be civil unrest and there would be what we termed unnecessary violence. I'm not sure if there was violence there, but some people died, so it's pretty serious. And whether it was a false flag or it was a combination or whatever the case may have been, as others have mentioned, it's certainly not the worst case scenario, but it put the country back and it put this movement back. And what I mean by movement is a movement to enforce election integrity. And that's really what this lawsuit is all about. And it's polarized everybody into these different factions, into sort of a left-right paradigm, which we don't want to see, but that's natural when you have things like this as well. Once we served the complaint, then we started to get motions to dismiss. We still haven't served Mark Zuckerberg and Priscilla Chan, and as you can imagine, that's not an easy service, but we're working on it. But there has been some recent developments that everybody needs to be aware of. First of all, when you go to federal court, sometimes you just don't get the kind of judicial help that you think you deserve. In fact, a lot of people that go to federal court, as I'm sure most of you know, are dissatisfied with what they face. Sometimes you can't explain it, but things happen in federal court and you have to deal with it. Once we started receiving motions to dismiss, we got one from Dominion, we got one from Facebook, we got one from CTCL, and then ultimately we got from Georgia and Pennsylvania, Michigan. We haven't heard from Wisconsin, but that's another topic. We amended the complaint. We not only amended the complaint to put additional information in, which had been developed since December 22nd, but we added an additional 140 plaintiffs, up from 8. The original 8 plaintiffs, being from 5 different states, went to 150 some odd people from, I think, 38 states or whatever the case may have been. At that point, the court should have allowed us to amend the complaint as a matter of right. Rule 15 says if you file your amended complaint within 21 days of the defendant's filing a motion to dismiss, that's the amended complaint. You only get one as a matter of right, but you get your amended complaint. Well, the court took it under advisement and now has let the motions to dismiss the original complaint proceed and sort of dual-tracked the motion to amend the complaint and allowed the defendants to object to the amended complaint. Well, now we're in a position where we're ready to file a third amended complaint without the second one even being accepted yet, but that's okay. I'm not going to let the court run our prosecution. We're not here asking for the court to save us. We haven't asked the court to do one thing. We haven't asked for an injunction. We haven't asked for anything. We're here to prosecute the case. We don't need the judge. We don't need the judge for anything. We asked for a jury trial. This is a damages case, and we should have been allowed to amend our complaint, but we weren't. We will be and will win that motion, but the judge wanted to hear a little bit more about standing and damages and traceability and different legal issues that do need to be determined. So I can't let the court deter us from doing what we need to do. So next week we'll be amending the complaint. And if the court's not going to certify the class, I think the court someday will certify the class, well then we're up to 1,100 plaintiffs. We'll just put 1,100 names in there and attach 1,100 affidavits. If the class grows to 10,000 and the court won't certify the class, well then we'll amend the complaint and add 10,000 names. And if the class grows to 100,000 or 1,000,000 and the court won't certify the class, and we'll just add 1,000,000 names. I don't know what else to do. We're not going to be deterred because nobody in the court system wants to deal with this case. It's not up to them. So here are some of the developments that we think are important. If you've been following the case, you know that we approached the situation a little differently than the other lawsuits that have been filed. I would call those other lawsuits election lawsuits. They were lawsuits naming the politicians, that is the governors or secretaries of state, in their official capacity. When you name an individual in their official capacity, you're essentially suing the state. So when you name Brian Kemp in his official capacity as the governor of Georgia, you're essentially suing the state of Georgia. And you can't sue a state for money damages, meaning you can't sue people in their official capacity for money damages. But individuals working in their official capacity don't violate the Constitution. If an individual working under color of authority violates the Constitution, they're not acting within the scope of their job. Governors don't violate the Constitution. They're acting in their individual capacity, and the case law is very clear that people with standing can sue that individual for damages in their personal capacity. So we use the name Mr. Kemp or Mr. Raffensperger or Ms. Whitmire or Mr. Wolf because we don't use the name Brian or Brad. If you see him in a parking lot, you say, "Hey Brad, how you doing?" But if you see that person with their suit on in court or in their job, you call him Mr. Kemp or Mr. Raffensperger. If they were in their official capacity, you'd call them Governor Kemp or Secretary Raffensperger. But since they're not being sued in their official capacity, with respect, we call them Mr. Kemp or Mr. Raffensperger or Mr. Wolf or Ms. Benson, whatever the case may be. So in that regard, we've named these politicians in their individual capacity for violating the Constitution. And because of their actions, everybody in the country has been damaged. Maybe you don't even know you've been damaged. Maybe you're cussing us right now. Maybe you're thinking, well, my candidate won, so there was no election fraud. And none of you should even be bringing this lawsuit. But they don't realize that if the shoe was on the other foot, like it was 4 years ago, well then they would be talking about election fraud and how their rights were violated. So I don't want to hear it. Everybody's rights have been violated, but only certain people have standing to sue. If you're a registered voter, you have standing to sue. That's our professional and legal opinion. If you're not a registered voter, you don't have the right to vote. So how could your right to vote be violated if you can't even vote? So if you're a registered voter, whatever state you're from, you've been damaged by these actors that are all over the country. But there's a secondary legal issue that is important, and that's called personal jurisdiction over the defendant. So, for example, Dominion Voting Systems can be found in Denver, Colorado. They're a Delaware corporation, but their headquarters is in Denver. So since Dominion Voting Systems can be found in Denver doing business in Colorado, well then the District of Colorado has jurisdiction over Dominion. CTCL is a so-called nonprofit from Illinois. But since they came to Colorado and dropped millions on Denver and Boulder and Yuma County and Broomfield County, they essentially did business in Colorado. Therefore, they subjected themselves to the jurisdiction of Colorado. Facebook is everywhere. Facebook's in all 50 states, and they're making money in all 50 states. They have a building right down here in Denver. They have an agent for service of process in Colorado. Facebook's doing business in Colorado. The individual plaintiffs have to have what are called minimum contacts with Colorado for the court to exercise personal jurisdiction over them. For example, if Mr. Kemp owned a condo in Vail, well, maybe that would be minimum contacts with Colorado. If a corporation is doing business like Ford Motor Company, well, if they're selling cars in Colorado, they're subject to the jurisdiction of Colorado. But we're unclear and we're unsure whether the court is going to agree with us that these individuals have the necessary minimum contacts for us to go out and literally, it's called long-arm jurisdiction, grab them and pull them into a Colorado court. Now, I'm on a public video, so I don't want to speak out of school, but I think it's common knowledge that courts tend to protect the bureaucrats. Sue me. That's just what they do. So we're afraid that the court is going to dismiss out the political defendants for lack of minimum contacts with Colorado. What contacts with Colorado does Gretchen Whitmire or Tom Wolf or Tony Evers, these different governors, what do they have with Colorado? Well, our basic theory is that since these states delegated a portion of their duty to run a free and fair election to a company from Colorado, well, then they established a minimum contact with Colorado. Since Georgia contracted with Dominion from Colorado, well, there's the minimum contacts. But that's the state of Georgia. Was Governor Kemp in his official capacity when he organized the contract, or at least was somewhat responsible for it as the chief executive officer? Or was that part of his conduct that created an individual liability? Well, at this point, it's unclear. So we're going to be moving to dismiss the individual politicians, if you will, with the understanding that we'll be refiling those cases against these individual parties in their home state. So, for example, co-counsel Ernie Walker is from Michigan. His law license is from Michigan. He's licensed to practice law here in the District of Colorado, but his law license is from Michigan. So we can refile an action in Michigan against those Michigan actors. We're searching for a Georgia attorney to help us file the action against the Georgia actors. Same with Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. And why should we stop there? Why shouldn't we be down in Arizona? Why shouldn't we be in Nevada right now? The Nevada legislature just censored their own Secretary of State for not investigating this election fraud. Well, did she violate the constitutional rights of everybody in the country by not investigating? She may have. Does everyone have standing to sue her? They probably do. But they probably also need to go to Nevada to do it, to try to reach out and pull someone into Colorado or whatever state you're from could be difficult. And we're afraid that if the court starts dismissing these other parties, well, that only makes us look bad and gives the court all that much more incentive to just keep dismissing everybody. And that's not something we want, and it's not something we can have. So we're making a strategic decision. The remaining defendants will be Facebook, CTCL, Dominion Voting Systems, Mark Zuckerberg, and Priscilla Chan. The first three definitely have ties to Colorado, and that will be moving forward. And if the court dismisses our case, then we'll be appealing to the 10th Circuit. That's all there is to it. Mr. Zuckerberg and Ms. Chan might also object to having minimum contacts with Colorado, but we're not giving up on that one. They're difficult to serve, but once they're served, we're not giving up on that one. And I don't need to get into the arguments as to why they have minimum contacts with Colorado, but suffice it to say, once we get them served, I'm sure they'll be filing motions to dismiss and sending me Rule 11 letters and everything. But we'll battle that out. And we could add more defendants as more information comes out. But at this point, that's the strategy that we're using. Now, we've got a team of really committed individuals, some of whom are sitting on the other side of the camera here. However, this is going to grow beyond our means. We already mentioned the fact that we need lawyers from other states to either file the lawsuits on their own or help us pro hoc vici into your state to file other actions in those several states. And so that's why we're making this video, to send the call out that we need the attorneys that are willing to stick their neck out, just like Mr. Walker and I have stuck our necks out, put our lives on the line, put our law licenses on the line to prosecute these cases. Well, if we're not willing to do that, then we're not going to have a country, and I'm not sitting around waiting for someone to show up. I'm not giving anyone my opinion as to whether or not anyone is going to show up. I think that next week a lot of information is going to be dropped that's going to open everybody's eyes. I'm going to Tulsa over the weekend. I think I'm going to learn some information that I don't know about, and I think we're all going to hear some things next week. But do we think that the courts are just going to change because that information is released? Do we think these defendants are just going to give up and roll over? No. They're going to triple their efforts. They're going to call us that much more frivolous, or they're going to call us a conspiracy theorist times 2. They're never going to give up. So waiting for the cavalry to come, well, we could wait all day for that. We are the cavalry. We're already here. The case has already been filed. I filed the case on December 22nd. The case has been active now for over 100 days. So for those of you who are sitting on the fence, well, you need to get off the fence and start getting something done. So I've said this from the beginning. If there are 10 of you from another state, well, why don't the 10 of you contribute $1,000 apiece and go get your own lawyer and intervene into this case? Why don't you go get your own lawyer and intervene? Millions of people could do that. If in a normal class action you wanted to join the class, you might go get your own lawyer and come join the class. Well, do that. You don't need me. Go get your own lawyer and join the class. Have them file their own pleadings. Have them make the complaint. Help. That's what we need. We need help, and lots of it. We've been very successful in our fundraising, but as you can imagine, the bills just mount up. You can't even imagine how they mount up. But keeping the paralegals paid, keeping the cost paid, getting our expert witnesses in line, all of that costs money. People have been contributing $5, $10, $20. Thousands of people have been contributing. But we need that to keep going. PayPal dropped our account, and so we sort of anticipated that. We knew that that was going to happen. I mean, that was just a matter of time. So now we're setting up an alternative pay source through our website. So I haven't asked anybody to contribute. If you want to contribute, fine. But what I'm asking everyone to do is to do something. Join the lawsuit. If you're a lawyer, call me, email me, get the word out. Because this 1,100 is going to turn into 10,000, which is going to turn into 50,000. And then it is going to overwhelm us. And then we won't be able to keep up. And then we won't be able to service everybody in the way that they need to be, we need to be represented. So we're not scared of that. If that's what happens, that's just what happens. But in the end, this is a call for help. I haven't really reached out to that many big-time lawyers because I don't really feel like we need a big-time lawyer. I think we need a class action firm. I think we need help. But in terms of who that is, well, that remains to be seen. And it could be a firm or some individuals that aren't publicly well known. Maybe they're not a household name, but that's essentially what we're looking for. So in that regard, I think everything's going really well. We're still alive. We are prosecuting this case to the fullest extent of the law. And although it's going to take some time, we think we're marching along in good fashion. And to have 1,100 people on our side, to have 1,100 people fill out an affidavit and send it to us is so extraordinary. I cannot tell you the power that's been generated through this lawsuit. So we're going to focus on Denver. We're going to focus on our defendants. And although we may be adding more, we need to branch out. We need to be filing other cases in other states against other individuals, particularly those that are being dismissed and others who have not even been named yet. So we're making this video to let everybody know how the case is going and some of the strategy decisions that we've made. But we're also making this video to ask for your help. And if you contribute to us, that's great. If you join us, that's wonderful. If you're a lawyer out there, give me a call, and I think we could do some good work together. Otherwise, share it, talk about it, Facebook it, send it out on Telegram, send it out on BitChute, whatever you need to do. We've been getting some good shout outs from some people. And we'll be a little more public now that we've gotten a little bit down the road. We'll be a little bit more public, and we'll be putting out these videos on a more regular basis. So thank you very much, and really for all of those that have been supporting us over the last couple of months. We really appreciate it. We couldn't have done it without you, and thank you very much.